It's been an exciting day. And I know you're all ready for something a little bit different. So it's my pleasure as spokesperson for the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe to welcome you, Secretary General, ambassadors, ladies, gentlemen, horses, and owls. This is something new. This is our first night owl session. It's going to be exciting. It's going to open you up to some new ideas. We've got a tremendous group of young people who are going to talk to you today. I'm going to hand over in a second, but before I do, I have something that I want you to do. You're going to be listening to some very interesting, innovative ideas. And these guys, they need your questions. At the end, I'll be coming round with this microphone, and I want to see all your hands in the air, and I want you to see them quizzing these people, asking them the most difficult questions you possibly can, because they've come here to Vienna to do exactly that. They're going to inspire you, and the first person to inspire you is going to be our host tonight, the moderator, Nikolai Atefie, who is from Vienna himself. And shall I give it away, how old you are? He's 18 years old. So we really have got a young crowd today. And let me hand over to Nikolai. Off you go, and let's hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, good evening, guten Abend to the first night owl session here at the Security Days in Vienna. As you all may know, youth and media is on this day's agenda, and we thought, why not combining both topics in one session? So today we would like to talk about social media with in special involvement of young people. We have 4 very interesting young personalities here this evening, and I would like to shortly introduce them to you. We start with Tadas Langaitis on my right from Lithuania. His background originally is in investment banking, and now he is a leading Lithuanian civic activist. In addition to that, he's a social entrepreneur and was, amongst others, founding Aukok.lt, the first online donation platform in Lithuania. And Tadas chairs the Civic Responsibility Foundation. Marija Novkovic, on his right, is a program manager from Montenegro, from the United Nations Development Program, and a specialist in open government. She was responsible for an online petitioning platform called Citizens' Voice, where citizens could get involved into politics in Montenegro. On her right, we have Jonne Catshoek, born and raised in the Netherlands, then studied in the United Kingdom, and now ended up in Georgia, where he got the director of the ELVA mobile phone platform. What he does is mapping local security incidents and needs of communities, and works then with decision makers together on a joint and effective response. Last but not least, we have Nielsen. He's from Denmark and the founder of a very interesting NGO called RAPOLITICS. So as you could think, it combines rap and politics. It promotes youth empowerment and works on a creative, constructive focus, amongst others, on urban artistic expression and democratic awareness raising. Thank you so much to you for coming. Before we start our debate, I would like to encourage you a second time, Kathy already did, to think on some questions. We want this not to have a debate only on the podium. We really would like to interact with you. So if you have questions regarding social media, politics involved in social media and how they can change maybe the world and provide freedom in the future, go ahead, and we will have in around half an hour the first question round from the audience. Now I would like to ask Tadas for the first presentation about his projects.
Hello everybody, thanks for having me here. We were told we'll have a audience of students tonight, so please feel free, young and unpredictable. We'll be waiting for your questions. We are practitioners here, I believe. We do different projects. You probably have a bigger picture, and it would be very interesting for us to hear your questions that would actually lead us to think deeper, maybe. So I'll start with a quick 10-minute presentation, and I almost had to change it after today's first panel, where Mr. Ivanov asked us to stop reminding of the Cold War era, but we just cannot. When Soviet Union occupied Lithuania in 1940s, strong communities were the norm in our country. This was a significant obstacle for the Soviet regime, and Stalin has decided to kill all kinds of community leaders. All people with professional, such as teachers, doctors, lawyers, shop owners, were targeted. Soviet regime worked hard to destroy our community networks. The goal was to shut down the knots of our community networks, if I may use such a technical term for our national tragedy. 280,000 Lithuanians, or 1 in every 10, was deported, and the social fabric of our country was destroyed. Society became atomized, fragmented mass of people who could now be managed by Soviet propaganda machine. So significant was the devastation of Lithuania's social fabric that we're still rebuilding our communities 60 years later. Now, if a Soviet Union was to occupy Lithuania today, would it have to target Facebook first? Social networks is where we exchange news, views, and ideas. This is where we organize ourselves at times for political action. And I'll show you a couple of recent examples how we do that. A month ago, we lost any trust in the Minister of Economy in our business community, after she tried to replace a highly professional, a highly qualified professional running an award-winning export promotion agency by installing a member of her political party with shady financial records. Here on the upper right corner, you can see the reach in thousands on our Facebook page that we started together with the business startup community. There we provided people with the details of the ongoing case and invited to different flash mobs as a form of a public protest. For example, we asked people to make origami pigeons and bring them to the doorsteps of the minister, where each origami pigeon has symbolized one new business that was started with the help of the agency's professional management. This is how it looked like. Exactly 1 week later, the Minister of Economy was forced out of the office. People's trust in the government was somewhat rebuilt. Trust between the people and political structures is a foundation of democracy. A dramatic test for this trust is alleged fraud in elections. Last October, mass vote buying seemed to have taken place in Lithuania during the first round of parliament elections. People collected data from various sources, put it all together into a virtual map of possible elections fraud and made it public. Election results in 2 election districts were cancelled. Yet we knew we had to do much more to make sure it does not happen again. With 5 days remaining to the second round of the parliament elections, we kicked off a citizen movement, White Gloves, which we chose as a symbol of clean hands. We invited to go out into the streets and patrol the local surroundings of the polling stations. The idea went viral and all traditional mass media picked it up. On elections day, volunteers showed up in half of Lithuania's election districts. The number of fraud cases in election has dropped dramatically. 2 more election rounds have taken place already this year. White Gloves were in streets again, and elections were fair and almost orderly. The citizens directly increased the quality of democracy. For me, though, social media is firstly a tool to build and foster communities. All kinds of communities. And each of them is important because each of them adds another thread to our social fabric that we have lost. It increases trust among the people. It increases so-called social capital of our society. Higher social capital leads to higher quality of democracy. And quality of democracy, to my belief, is an important ingredient for more security. Thank you.
Thank you, Tadas, for your very interesting introduction to your work. Next would be Marija.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I must say I'm a little bit intimidated by this room and by the audience, so let me start kicking off with a joke. I come from Montenegro, a tiny Mediterranean country with a lot of tall people. If it weren't for the Dutch, we would probably be the tallest, except we don't have the evidence to prove it. We are really bad at keeping statistical data. But I promise you, we are the tallest nation in the world. It will be proven someday. I'm going to share with you today a story about Montenegro, social media, and technology. All of these stories are from my work, from UNDP Montenegro, and you know UNDP is your traditional mainstream development organization, except recently in Montenegro we started experimenting a lot with new tools, new ways to engage those groups that tend to be left out, and these are some of the stories that I will share with you today. So what's up in Montenegro? When we were starting, we were envisaging a group of university students, so I had a completely different opening line for this slide, but never mind. This year, Montenegro was part of the global consultations on post-2015 development goals. So a pretty massive topic. So what will happen with the world post-2015 and what should we be concerned about? And this was supposed to be a dialogue with the citizens of Montenegro, and we only had 3 months to do it, to engage them in this very high-level discussion. How we did it was simple, relatively. It was a massive online campaign relying heavily on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Google+. I have to share with you the fact that half of the country is on Facebook. So for us it was an advantage. And after 3 months, more than 8,000 people voted. They cast their vote for the future post-2015. And that actually amounts to 2% of the people who took part in these consultations globally. We are usually below 0 percentile. Similarly, we didn't want to limit the discussions and decisions that concern our future to the conference and meeting rooms, because a conference room can only take up so many people. I mean, there are interested groups that cannot access a fancy air-conditioned conference room, and yet there are talks there that concern their livelihood. So we started live tweeting from events. It was scary in the beginning because anything you say now can be online in a matter of seconds, and you really have to watch your step like I'm doing right now. But it was fun, it was interesting. We got to the people who were interested in the topics that we branded with hashtags, of course. We had some hardcore opponents. We had people who would be basically so frustrated that they would throw opposing views at any discussion during our events. But you have to, I mean, for us it was a way to open up the dialogue, achieve participation and enhance transparency, and that's something that was really, really rewarding. Once I actually wrote, I made a Storyfy, a list of tweets from an event that I was part of, and someone who wasn't even in the room was taking part in the discussion on Twitter, and then he saw my Storyfy and he was like, "Why didn't you include me in this Storyfy? I was probably the only one who engaged and wasn't in the room." It's a negative comment, and we just found a way to manage it. So we now do live tweeting from events pretty regularly, and we are using the growing Twitter community to carry on the discussion online. And that's how we actually arrived to the conclusion about 6 things that only citizens have. So it's no longer about the governments, it's no longer about political parties and their 4-year election cycles. There are some things that only citizens have in any country. It's definitely unique software skills, because they are learning how to write code. It's fascinating stuff. They have technical knowledge. My favorite, they have first-hand experience as users of public services. They are the people who encounter barriers or rude behavior or obstacles when they go and seek their entitled rights. So they have this experience which allows them to innovate when it comes to public services. And of course they are trusted by other citizens, they are everywhere, and they have many, many eyes. So to sum up this slide, the strongest governments, according to McKinsey Global Center on Governance, the stronger governments are going to be those who serve their people. So for us, this was a backdrop against which we were trying to design a program that would put the citizens behind the steering wheel, empower them to be the heroes of their local communities and use these 6 skills that only they have. And we came up with a concept for a social innovation project that we called Open Ideas for Montenegro. It basically was really simple in design. It involved 2 stages. In the first stage, we were dealing with post-its. I should have already told you that our big idea with social innovation and open ideas for Montenegro was to utilize technology, because it objectivizes things, it makes things less painful, more efficient, more visible, more transparent. But in the start, we were just using post-its, very rudimentary. Why? Because we wanted to get out of our comfort zone, get out of the capital, get out of the fancy air-conditioned rooms and go and meet the people where they live. So we had 18 open meetings around the country in the harshest winter of 2012. It was really something, traveling for 4 hours in the snow just to go and meet people and talk to them for 2 hours about anything that bugs them when they interact with the public administration, when they access education, healthcare, when they seek jobs. And our motto was basically quantity over quality. So we got a lot of views from people directly on post-it notes about the things that bug them. And then in the second stage, we wanted them to have a stage where they would consider how technology could be used to alleviate some of these concerns. So if not to eliminate the problem, then at least to minimize it. So we had an apps competition. We launched a competition for the citizens themselves to take on board some of these ideas and put them in action via technology, mobile or internet. And some months after, we had a meeting with our mentors because our teams were working hard on bringing these ideas to fruition, and some of these apps were mobile. And then several months after, this May, we actually got our winning app that was completely designed by the citizens of Montenegro in a process that UNDP only facilitated. So it was completely a civic-centered initiative where citizens themselves were addressing the problems that they have already identified. And the app is actually really simple. It's not groundbreaking, but it is a big deal for us because it turns our citizens into vigilant reporters who are scanning the country every day for illegal waste dumps, for abuse of official vehicles, for illegal parking, roadblocks and different kinds of problems with traffic. But you can also report positive examples and thus contribute to the change in our culture. And the application is already gearing a lot of enthusiasm. It's picking up. The guys already have more than 1,000 downloads. And just recently, before I would come to this event, there was a capture of a person driving an official vehicle who passed the red light. It was captured and sent to the web portal, and then from there to the Ministry of Interior, who already conducted the disciplinary proceedings against the person in question, who was then fined. It was an amount of, I think, 10% of their salary, but still it goes to show you that it's working and that citizens are making a change through technology. So, in a nutshell, that's what we did in 2012 and 2013. My story only dates back 1 year ago. It doesn't go back to 1940s. But if you like what we do, get in touch. Thank you. I'm also looking forward to the questions.
Thank you, Marija. I think what you said is very important, that we should try to get as much people as possible involved and not to have them in fancy air-conditioned meeting rooms. And we made a first step, as you can feel. We have still a fancy meeting room, but it's not air-conditioned. So now we are moving on with Jonne, and I think you will tell us about how ELVA is involved in the conflict between Russia and Georgia.
Something like that. Thanks. So my name is Jonne. I work in the Republic of Georgia as a conflict analyst. And today I want to tell you something about a mobile phone platform that me and my colleagues have developed, which is called ELVA. And the purpose of ELVA is that it allows citizens to map and report local security incidents and needs. And it subsequently allows them to cooperate with local decision makers as well as local security providers, such as the police or international organizations, to address those security issues in an effective and locally appropriate manner. And to give you an idea of how ELVA works and how we've been using it, I want to discuss a case study of how we've been using it since 2010 in Georgia. So this case study is all about the aftermath of the brief war between Georgia and Russia in 2008. So as most of you know, there was a brief war over the region of South Ossetia. And following this war, many communities bordering South Ossetia were suffering daily security incidents, ranging from shootings to movement by armed groups, or local citizens being detained by the de facto South Ossetian authorities when they crossed the divide to visit family. So serious issues that really affect the security of those communities. And although the international community really tried to address a lot of those issues that appear to be very difficult, and 2 years after the war, we saw that many communities were still dealing with the same types of issues they were dealing with in 2008. So me and my colleagues started thinking, you know, what is the main reason behind this? I mean, those organizations are really well equipped, they know what to do, but still somehow a lot of these security incidents are relatively persistent. And we came to the conclusion that one of the main problems is that security strategies are often maybe insufficiently responsive to the evolving needs, security needs and interests of those communities. I mean, there are two main reasons for that. In the first place, it is extremely hard to get accurate data about security incidents from these communities. I mean, they're remote, they're isolated, in the winter they're hardly accessible. And you know, secondly, even if you would be able to get data from those communities, you know, it would be very hard to measure what impact your security program has on the local situation. So what we thought would be needed would be to have some form of self-reinforcing feedback loop between the communities and their security providers, such as the local police, local authorities, and international security organizations. And that feedback loop would allow citizens to provide accurate information about security incidents and needs to the security providers, and would allow them to also evaluate the programs implemented in their communities. And this would then in turn allow the security providers to adapt and readapt their security strategies to the evolving needs of the communities. So that is a win-win situation in our mind. So in order to facilitate that, we built the ELVA platform. ELVA is Georgian for lightning or express message. And it's a fairly simple idea, really. What it is, it's a central phone number, an ELVA phone number, and citizens can use either SMS or a smartphone application to text a wide range of information to that number. That can range from weekly in-depth questionnaires about security trends in their area to individual reports about individual incidents, or they can request assistance in emergency situations in their area. Now, as soon as that information ends up on the ELVA phone number, on the ELVA server, it is automatically displayed online in visually compelling data visualizations, such as an online interactive map, graphs and statistics, so that basically anyone could go to that website and get a latest update about what is going on in these communities and what is needed. So there's many different kinds of information being sent to this phone number, and the platform automatically recognizes what kind of information that is. If it's just a security report, it might simply be stored on the map and in graphs, and then nothing else happens. If it's a request for emergency assistance, however, it will blast the message onwards to all other participants in the mobile phone network, such as other community representatives, security providers, etc. And if needed, they can then in turn respond by sending a message back to the central phone number. So I mean, that sounds interesting, but you probably will have a few questions, including, you know, why would you want to work with citizen monitors instead of with professional monitors? And I think Marija also already discussed that. In the first place, citizen monitors are in their communities 24/7, so they see and hear almost everything that's going on there, and they have a better understanding of the local needs than most others. Secondly, they have a broad social network that allows them to get information from different sources. And then SMS and mobile application. Why do we use these tools instead of other available tools? Well, that's very simple. These communities are very isolated. There's no internet coverage in most of them. So SMS is basically the most available, most widespread communication medium that allows them to stay in touch with us, and it allows us to engage in a long-term dialogue with them. But there's however one challenge. SMS itself is a fairly superficial communication medium, because it only allows for transmitting 160 characters. But we want to get real in-depth data from these communities, not just simple messages, but we want to know not only what happens, but also how does that affect the community, what solutions are being suggested, what other programs are being held in the community. And in order to resolve that issue, we developed an approach that's called the SMS questionnaire. It's a very simple idea. It's just a regular questionnaire with regular questions. But instead of answering with a full answer to each question, citizens can just pick a 3-letter code from a list to indicate what they want to answer. And in this way they can respond to up to 40 different questions within the space of one text message. So we've been running these questionnaires, in this case already since 2010. So we have a very fine-grained idea of exactly what is going on in these areas and how different security variables are correlated to each other. We, for instance, don't only know what security incidents happen, but also how they impact the sense of safety and security in the community. Communities tell us also when they cross the divide to interact with other communities. And this is what it looks like online eventually. So you see on top there an interactive map that basically shows different types of incidents in different colors and differently sized bubbles. And by swiping the timeline that you see underneath the map, you'll just get a very intuitive overview of the geospatial development and trends of security incidents through this area. So very simple to understand for anyone. Even if you don't like data, if it's intimidating to you, this is an easy way to play around with it and to get an impression of what's going on. And we really think that it's important for people who are far away from these communities to really grasp kind of the local context. So this is why we also allow citizens to submit photo and video reports to the platform, and they're also being displayed on the platform online so that you can get like a good idea of what the latest developments are. Subsequently, there are some automated statistics there that help you to get a basic overview of what are the safest communities, which communities are least safe, what types of incidents are most common. And that data is all automatically processed and analyzed. So this is live. There's no human intervention needed. That happens automatically. Now, we've been really overwhelmed by the response we got from the communities, which I think explains why we're still doing this 3 years after. On average, for 1 year for this project, over 1,000 security incidents are being reported to us, which I think is in any case a lot, but especially if you think that we only have 18 volunteers for this particular project. 18 emergency situations are on average being addressed by the communities together with security providers in a year. Over 4,000 visits by security providers are being reported. So not only how many, but also what do the organizations do when they're in the communities. And then we collect all this data in quarterly reports as well. Now, overall, the results, I think, are that we've achieved, in some cases, an effective crisis management. So cooperation between the communities and their security providers, such as the EU monitoring mission in Georgia and the local police. And we've done that in cooperation with also UNDP Georgia and our partner organization, A Safer World. Because we can really track in depth what kind of security developments there are, we can also see what incidents deviate from the trend. So there's a basic early warning capacity there as well. And then thirdly, we see increased knowledge sharing and cooperation between the communities and their security providers. But one of the parts that I think is most important is that because the communities now get the right to evaluate the programs implemented in their area, you get a beneficiary feedback mechanism that allows organizations to adapt their strategies and programs to the needs of the communities. So this platform is open source and it's free. We have decided to make it available to anyone, any organization that likes to set up a project like this. And so if any of you is interested, please feel free to come to me afterwards to ask me questions, or just go to our website where you can sign up for trying it out. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jonne. This seems to be a project which could be accessed in the future in lots of other communities. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Now Lucas will present us something about musical activism.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here today. Is my presentation ready? Okay. So I would like to start with a bit about myself. My name is Lucas Nielsen, and I'm from RAPOLITICS, which is a Danish organization. We started in 2009, and basically we do a lot of work in Denmark, but we also work internationally. We work in Egypt, in Jordan, in Bolivia as well. And I wanted to tell you a bit about myself first. So, first thing and most important is that I do not rap. So don't expect me to rap, to beatbox, or to freestyle, because this is not something that I do. I love the music, but I don't have the skills. And I prefer to work backstage, actually, and not on stage. Second thing that I want to tell you is actually that I got my bicycle stolen last year, just before Christmas. And I'm really upset about that. And, you know, living in Copenhagen, you actually live a very secure life. We do have drugs, we do have crime, we do have robberies and things like that. But this is actually one of the first incidents for me where I experienced a kind of unsafe situation. And while preparing for this session, I talked with everybody in RAPOLITICS and looked at our products, our music, and I actually found out that security and safety is something that we work with a lot in our work. And we do that because we have a lot of young people and adolescents while we work in Denmark, is basically in marginalized communities. We work with street children, we work with kids in prisons as well, young adults in prisons, and they are very much preoccupied with the concept of safety and security. And the last thing about me, which you should know, is that I see myself as a youth activist. Actually, I work at the municipality of Copenhagen and at RAPOLITICS, so I kind of have 2 full-time jobs, which is quite a lot. But if you ask myself, I do see myself as a youth activist first. So now you know everything about me. So let's talk about RAPOLITICS. The name says almost everything, to be honest, because we work with rap and politics, but we also work with communication. And I really wanted to show a video, but I'm afraid we're not online at the moment, so I'm going to skip that and just tell you that what we do is basically, as told, rap, politics, and communication. And communication is very important for us. We have a theory which we work with, which is called appreciative inquiry, where you actually look at things in a different way. You don't look at problems. The problems are only frustrated dreams. And this is something that we try to teach the young people that we work with. And if we take the 3 elements that we work with, it can boil down to a concept which is called raptivism and artivism. We heard about activism before a bit, but we work with raptivism and artivism in different ways. And I wanted to tell you a bit short story about one of the projects we do in Copenhagen, here, which is called SAFE. And this was a project in 2010 and 2011 where we reached out to 1,000 young children at schools, and it was basically an anti-bullying project. So what we tried to do was, we tried to address the issue of bullying, because bullying is actually a big issue in schools. It affects the safety and security of young people. And we proposed different issues. I'm afraid you cannot read it, so I'm just going to explain it. We proposed the concept of respect as a core issue of addressing bullying. So, if you don't respect others, you're actually not respecting yourself. So this is something that we propose for the kids. Also, we want them to reflect on silence gives consent. So if you see somebody getting bullied and do not do anything about it, then you're actually enforcing this unsafe environment. And we wanted them to discuss how can we create a safe school. So it was a quite interesting project, which we're really proud of. And what we did was we visited a lot of schools, and we have something called rap coaches with our young rap artists that have been trained to facilitate dynamic workshops for youth. So they raised these questions for young people, and the result was that they produced a lot of poems and a lot of tracks about this issue. And if you look on the message of all these products, basically what all of them was saying was, you can make a difference. You can help making this school more safe. You can do something to stop bullying. So that was really interesting. And you can see some of our pictures, some of the rap coaches here. I'm not going to go into details. I want to play a song for you, of course, because we do work with songs. But before that, I want to tell you a bit story about this song. I don't know if you guys remember in 2009, we have the COP15, the climate summit in Copenhagen. Everybody was very enthusiastic about that. Actually, Copenhagen was translated into Hopenhagen. So they really wanted a global agreement on that summit, which did not happen, unfortunately. At the same time, we're working in disadvantaged communities, and I myself was facilitating some of the workshops then. And the group of young people that I was engaged with, when they heard that Obama himself was coming to Denmark, they got really excited. Why? Well, he was elected the year before. He was the first black president. And they were really inspired by the message, inspired by his use of social media, inspired by all his talk about we can change the world together. And they wanted to talk with him. They wanted to meet him. So I was like, okay, how am I going to do that? Quite a challenge. But what we did is we introduced them to the concept of writing a song to Obama. So what do you want to say to Obama? So that's the song I'm going to play for you. Only 30 seconds. Okay? Are you ready? Yeah? Let's see.
Thank you for calling the White House comment line. The office is now closed. Your comment is very important to the President, so please call again between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Obama, 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 Obama.
Cavicailleur et Polskin. Yes, we can. Cavi stopping racisme. Yes, we can. Cavi stopping criminalité. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
So yeah, so that was 30 seconds of the song. You can listen to the whole song on our YouTube channel. What these young people that wrote the song, what they discovered was that rap is actually a dialogue. When you rap a song, you're actually communicating with the society. You're communicating with the world. They are actually responding to Obama. He may not hear the song, never. But this is an invitation for dialogue. This is what rap is. And when they realize that, they get very confident. Their self-esteem was just boosting, it was amazing. They thought, well, we do have a voice. We can make a difference with words and actions. And it was actually a very amazing empowerment process happening right here. So, what they wanted, the message of the song, I may say, is that everybody can make a difference. So that's what they're telling in the song. So they are trying to inspire other young people to take action, to not be involved in gangs. Don't destroy the society you're part of, but you can actually contribute to that society. So that was the message. And somehow, I really think that this message is somehow creating a kind of safety for the other people. At least the message is addressing the issue of safety from the youth themselves. So, if we look at a broader perspective, I really believe that empowered youth, dialogue-seeking youth, confident youth, reflecting youth equals strong, resilient, and safer society. So we do work very local, but the ambitions are very big, as you can hear. So how did this story end? Did they meet Obama? No, I couldn't manage that. However, they actually got invited to the national television, which was a really huge success for them. And I have to say this, even though they were invited to participate in the national television, the most comments they got was actually from the social media. They posted their tracks, they posted the video, and got much more attention from that than from the national television, which is quite interesting. So this is how we look like. We are present everywhere, which makes sense for us, of course. We have Facebook, we have YouTube, SoundCloud, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and we have a blog as well. So we're trying to be there where our target group is present. And I have some numbers for you, but it's maybe a bit boring. But I think it's important to highlight here that we actually is a very small organization. We are 80% driven by volunteers, and our communication is driven 100% by volunteers. I'm gonna skip this one. So I'm gonna talk a bit about how do we use social media. And I make this illustration for you. Most of our work is basically using social media to promote messages about change, about respect, discrimination, safety, security, social issues, politics. And we do that by disseminating our music, or the products that young people have created. There's three things you have to be careful about when doing that. First, quality. We actually are not much preoccupied with the quality of the product itself. It's important for us, but most important is actually the process. All the thinking the young person did in order to get to that song. We also have to be very careful when we post a video or a track produced by the young people, because if they don't feel confident, if they're not happy with the result, we cannot post it, because maybe that will actually be problematic for them. Maybe their friends will bully them because of that. So this is something we have to be very careful about. And also, we do, yes, sorry to say, but we do use self-censorship. We have to, because we work internationally as well. And just to give you a short example, we have 2 rappers from Gaza, Palestine, in Denmark for 2 months. And they were in an interview in the radio, and they were very, very critical to the government Hamas in Gaza. And we basically thought, well, this could compromise their security, their safety, so we cannot promote that online. So those are the kind of reflections we have. We try to connect with our target group as well, and also try to connect them with each other, because we work in different countries, and we like to have like an intercultural communication going on. And our role here is to be a mediator. And I think for everybody, all organizations working with social media, it's very important to be aware of this role. You have to be a mediator, you have to be active and to promote the different discussions happening. We do also promote what we call digital activism. We have a project right now going on in Copenhagen, which is called Tomorrow Today, which focuses on the Arab Spring and the revolutionary rap and digital activism. And we go to schools and talk about this issue and make young people produce poetry and songs. And what we are careful of here is that the issue about propaganda. We are not promoting revolution in Denmark. We are not promoting revolution in the different communities that we visit. But we are kind of telling what other young people are doing and maybe inspire them to use social media in a different way than they do normally. A thing that I believe very strongly in is that basically co-creation is the future. We have to let go. We have to not be afraid of losing control. We have to involve our followers, our likers, our viewers, our fans in a very active way. They have to produce your message as well, because that's 100% more effective than you doing it yourself. So, final remarks. I think I'm gonna skip the first one, and I'm gonna tell you 2 short stories if I have the time. Yeah? Okay. So, we did a project in Denmark, which was 6 weeks long, and it was in a deprived neighborhood. And at the end of the project, we had a final party with all the participants that could perform for their friends, for their family, and for the local community. Really nice concert it was. And after the concert, a mother came to me and said, "You know what? My daughter has changed her mentality completely." And she told me that before that project, her daughter, which is a 100% Danish girl, teenager, she was very intimidated by boys with a minority background and didn't have any relations with them. But during the project, they actually worked together. They wrote a song together, they recorded a song together, and they performed together. And that actually made this girl think very different about boys with ethnic backgrounds. And I think it's a very powerful message, because it is in the local relational work that we can create safety in the community. Last point is actually a quote from one of our rappers. He started with us as a participant in 2009, and he was really good. He can freestyle. He should be here freestyling for you guys. But he continued with Rapolitics, and right now he's working for us as a Rapolitics coach. And he told me, I'm gonna read it. "A society where you feel included and accepted is difficult to break into pieces." And when you think about it, yes, it's true. And actually, we can use social media to get young people feel included in the society, feel that they have a space where they can communicate, feel that they can be heard in the social media, that people actually gives a damn, I'm sorry my language, about them. And I think that's the last words. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lucas, and thank you to introducing the topic social media, which is the topic for today's discussion. And I would like to pose just one question to all of you, and then we are starting asking our audience. Just for me to know, how many followers do you have on Twitter with Rapolitics? How many likes do you have on Facebook?
Okay. So, I did have a slide, but it was very small, so you couldn't see it. To be honest with you, we have like 3,000 likers on Facebook, which is not a lot. But it's because that our Facebook site only existed for 1 year. So before that, we had different groups and different pages on Facebook, and we deleted everything and created one single page, because this is the way of doing it. If you have too much going on, people will get confused. So one page.
Thank you. So 3,000 people. why I ask this, there is a new movement, a new generation of internet users called selectivists. So when I heard the first time about this, it was a Facebook post on the OSCE site. I wrote the article, and it sounded very interesting to me. Selectivists are people who are liking a Facebook page, something which is social entrepreneurship, something which is maybe an organization who is involved in community service, NGO, but that's it. So I like a page, and then I say, well, I contributed my part, yeah, I've done it. So there are people saying it's actually not good to have too many likes, because the people think, okay, I'm done with that, I did my part. But others say that likers of Facebook pages, followers, are much more likely to get involved into projects, to donate, to get involved in real life. I would like to ask the panelists now, especially you two, what do you think about selectivists?
Let's use both mics. I think that we have to objectively evaluate the data that we collect over time. For example, for both the examples that I have showed, the white gloves and the hands-off, the Enterprise Lithuania movement that helped to kick off the Minister of Economy out of office, both had a reach on Facebook of close to 100,000 users. Of the people then are selectivists. But what important is the 10% are not. And they're there. And usually these are the opinion leaders. Statistic is that about 1 in 10 is an opinion leader. And that is sufficient to lead the rest. So I'm a strong believer that when the 3,000 people say they're coming for a public protest, pretty much what you have is an actual reach of 3,000 people actively involved and supporting you on the issue.
What? Yeah, Marija, maybe?
If I can just contribute to this, there's another term, clicktivism. So if you click, if you're doing something useful. But in reality, it doesn't boil to, do you like a page or are you present online? The real question is the conversation between the citizen and the government, for example, two-way or one-way? Are you using Facebook posts to spam your followers with information, or are you engaging them in a dialogue? Are you responding to their comments and to their questions and their frustrations, or are you just using it as yet another communications channel? So in a funny story from Montenegro, there was an event where a representative of the government was taking part, and a bulk of the Twitter community was there. And someone checked their official Twitter account, and it turned out they were only following 9 people, 9 accounts, Twitter accounts. Most of them were ministries. But when they heard that, when they realized that the Twitter community was upset that the official government account was not following them, it was changed within hours. The people who were working on the official Twitter account were really efficient, and it just started following a lot of people in the country. So with simple conversations that take place both online and offline, you can change things if it's two-way.
I agree with you, but my question is, in a country of Montenegro with 600,000 inhabitants, where maybe a promille or something is involved into Twitter and Facebook, it's possible. But for example, in the United States, with 300 million inhabitants, even if they know now everything about us, what would you? How should it work with 10 millions of people?
Well, that's a whole different context that you set out for us at the moment. But I remember there was a bulk of research done on using Facebook for political campaigning, for political causes. And even though there's a lot of campaigning on Facebook, it turned out that people didn't like Facebook being used for political activism. So I think it boils down to context, people's preferences, and the way they use social media, but definitely that's where the conversation is taking place.
You have to objectively evaluate every market separately. And in Lithuania, for example, there are over 1.2 million Facebook accounts. So it's in 3 million citizen country. It seems to be huge. But then in reality, it's about 600,000 people using Facebook. Still large. Twitter is close to non-existent in Lithuania. Twitter is very popular in Latvia. And you have to sort of really stick to the local environment. If Lithuania would be 30 million people, let's say, instead of 3 million people, which I understand is a question, what would change? I believe the resources in the NGO sector would be, hopefully, would be completely different. And actually, you would have resources to have a team that would scale up the project. In a market as small as Lithuania, we're basically a bunch of volunteers.
Thank you. Lucas, you want to add something? No. Okay, then we should take the first question from the audience.
Just make sure the mic.
Kathy Burton.
First question.
Yes.
I've got a lady up here. Okay, put your hands up, right, so I can see you.
Hi, my name is Sonja Stojanovic-Gajic. I come from Belgrade Center for Security Policy. It's a think tank. Strongly believe in engaging the other through social media, but I have two more conceptual questions. First one is for a colleague from Lithuania. The way I understood your presentation is that the main advantage of social media is building social capital. And it stands as long as it deals with accountability or things that people tend to agree about. And my question to you is, have you seen examples on where social media actually helped build consensus in divided society? For example, in your country, have you seen social media facilitating a dialogue between Lithuanian and a Russian ethnic community, or, you know, with some of your neighbors or elsewhere? And the other question is for our Dutch-Georgian activist. I very much like this innovative use of social media for security monitoring. Dealing with security politics, however, I'm very keen to hear on what kind of precautionary measures have you made in a way to validate the sources and also to prevent this kind of reporting being misused for creating panic or lynch over parts of community, because it obviously can be a very powerful tool, but it could also backfire. So I would be very keen to hear about your management strategy of the risk, and if you could tell a bit more on how exactly did you facilitate the dialogue with security providers in a safe way so that people do not feel threatened for reporting whatever maybe security providers fail to do?
Thank you for a really good question. I remember one example in Lithuania where the school children were invited to fight the bullying in the school themselves in one very simple and innovative campaign. And actually 600,000 kids signed up and put it on their account on various social networks, primarily on Aukok.lt, a Lithuanian social network. So that was, I think, where the school children were surprised themselves of how united they are in their own problem, in solving their own problem. In terms of minorities, I do not have an example, a positive example. I hope that there are in Lithuania already. I see a potential to make fun of, in making fun of politicians who are often choose to sharpen the issues, minority issues in Lithuania. And basically their existence is based on constantly sharpening these issues. If we as citizens would be able to make fun of these politicians, probably we could do good actually in resolving minority issues. But I don't know yet examples of this. We have one particularly popular and funny politician, something of kind of Zhirinovsky in Russia. in Lithuania, and then hopefully we're moving that direction. But all in all, I would rather say that from what I have observed is that social media has yet more potential to actually increase the divide between different social groups, because it's so much easier to actually be popular and among your Facebook friends, for example, by making constant jokes and bullying on a certain group. So that we observe in our political life in the country, where the conservatives are attacking the left, the social democrats. The social democrats are trying to online attack, so far quite unsuccessfully, the conservatives, and actually it's just increasing the divide between the two political views, and it's increasing a divide in the society as well. So I would say, all in all, I see more potential for the divide, but definitely there is a very good potential to bridge the gaps between minority groups.
Thanks for that question. I think it's an excellent question, and it's really one of the core issues that you deal with, or core challenges that you deal with if you set up a project such as ours. We can impossibly verify all information that comes in. In a sense, that's also not what we're trying to do, because we try to be be a channel between. A communication channel between communities and their security providers, but so in a sense we're trying to display the community's perspective of on their security rather than the hard reality. But that being said, we of course try to make sure that data is as reliable as possible. And I think there's a few things very important for that. In the first place, our partner organization, Safer World, they're a British conflict transformation organization. They've been in that area for many years now, and they know the communities very well. So they have selected these volunteers from the communities, at this point 1 per community. These people are, they have to be, first of all, not affiliated to any political party. Secondly, they need to be trusted by their community representatives, and they need to have a broad network of contacts within their communities. So we try to establish a relationship of trust with these people. They've been doing this on a voluntary basis for 3 years now, so we get to know them quite well, and vice versa. And they're not your average candidates for a project like this. They're usually farmers between 50 and 60 years of age. So not the type of people you'd expect to be texting frequently. That being said, of course, we meet often with them to discuss what they've been texted in collectively. They know each other very well. They know each other's situations relatively well, and we know the communities also quite well. So if really fake data would come in, we're pretty certain that we would be able to trace that. And to answer your second question, if I recall correctly, your second question was about how we prevent the spread of misinformation and how we make sure that this network is not being used for spreading panic, right? There's 2 things important in that. First of all, what used to happen before this network was in place is that something would happen in community A, and then traveled by the time the story traveled to community B, it would already be distorted. By the time it traveled from community B to community C, it would be even more distorted. Whereas nowadays, if something happens, a community can send an emergency message to the platform. The platform automatically forwards it to a coordinator, who then calls the EU monitoring mission and the local police and asks them 2 questions. First of all, are you aware of this emergency incident? Yes or no? Second question, if so, what is your planned response? Now, that information we can then instantly distribute amongst everyone in the network. So the information available is at that point more updated and more accurate than what otherwise would be available. Moreover, we can tailor quite precisely what pieces of information are visible to whom. So parts of it might be public, but you might also say that you have a password protected part of the site that is only accessible to certain people. So that way what we can do is, if we feel that some information is just, we don't want that to be public, because for instance we don't want journalists to go to a village and say, last year there were 400 incidents there, this year 500 incidents, might that have to do with the new mayor, or come up with another reason to turn that into a scandal. We can actually close that off from public view so that the information is no longer visible. So did that answer the full question? Oh yeah. I'll keep that brief, just to give you an idea. So what I just mentioned is a project like this cannot function at all if there's not a buy-in in advance from the key actors. That's very important, I think. So this project was discussed with all relevant local security providers, including international security actors, Ministry of Internal Affairs, local police, so that people understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so since the moment we started the project, they've been very supportive in resolving issues, because they see it as a win-win situation. They get better information about local needs and can do their work better. The communities are also assisted more than before. So they've been very supportive, and for instance with emergency incidents, they keep us updated, we keep them updated if we hear something, and then they will eventually implement a response, and not us, because that is in principle not our task.
Thank you for the question. Who would have the next question? Really no one? No, here.
We have got one. We've got one.
Hi, David Galbraith, University of Bath. My question really picks up on the last speaker who was talking. I have this urge to rap all of a sudden, but it picks up on the issue of intercommunal dialogue. And what I'm particularly interested in, I've done a lot of work on ethnic conflict in the OSCE, and what I'm particularly interested in is border regions, and this idea of how do you go about using social media to promote intercommunal dialogue, because social media could be used, in fact, to encourage within community dialogue. And I think about northern Kosovo as a good example of how social community could go in either direction. Thanks.
Well, in the case of Denmark, basically we have some kind of tensions between the native Danish youth and youth with another background, like myself. I'm Brazilian, by the way, born in Brazil. So, yes, I think that the intercultural dialogue you're speaking about, this is something that we really focus on, and I think my bit about the need for democratizing your content is maybe an answer for your question, because having the video of this girl with 4 minority guys rapping this message about safety to Obama, this created actually a lot of dialogue, intercultural dialogue, where you had her friends and her part of the world meeting the other part of the world, the other part of the society, in a dialogue on social media, which was a really interesting example, I think.
Yeah, may I add something? As I'm a project manager for a Council of Europe's Roma inclusion project, I also know a very interesting project in the Czech Republic, where 4 young boys from 10 to 15 rapped about why for the Roma society, why for the Roma people and for the Roma children it is important to go to school. We will probably share this link on our Facebook page later this evening. Do we have another question from the audience? Yes, please, in the second row.
Thank you. My name is Pia Weber from Switzerland. I just have a small question on your interaction with let's say, official authorities. I would wonder, how are you perceived by official/security authorities, especially from Lithuania over Montenegro over to Georgia? But generally, I would be interesting how this interaction is going on. If this has fostered a certain cooperation, or if you had to face also some misunderstandings or actually antagonism also with the authorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Always a question in our minds when we're going to receive that phone call, but it just doesn't happen. So I believe in Lithuania is actually quite a democratic and safe country generally. We have a lot of stories about our wicked security forces, but the phone doesn't ring. So in terms of public order, the public process that we were organizing, actually often we were organizing it without the permission received in advance, which is basically called and said, look, it's going to happen in 24 hours. And we all know we need 5 days with municipality to get the permission. So we both understand, I mean us and the police, that there is no way we can get the permission, and at the same time we both understand that it's anyway going to happen because it's a flash mob. We don't control it. We let the gin out of the bottle, sorry. So police has cooperated basically at all times. We have clearly sort of agreed the rules and never faced a problem. A very different situation with political parties. For example, I have personally been accused of being a conservative, a member of a conservative party in Lithuania, though I am not. I'm not a member of any political party. But every time I launch a new project, a new civic initiative now, for the last probably already 2 years, the Social Democrats next day start spreading the rumor, oh, it's another young conservatives project. So that's something that I'm actually dealing with all the time, and there are many ways how to deal with that. But I would say the politics in the country are an obstacle often because they have to go out and prove to the people, to the citizens, that it is not a political project of Conservative Party. So kind of have to do that extra work all the time, but no security issues as such.
Thank you for that excellent question. I must say, when we designed our social innovation project, it was a massive risk because we didn't know what we were getting in the end. It was one of those projects where you start and you don't know what your end result is going to be because it depends on the citizens and their ideas and how they utilize their energy. But I guess in our case, we were really lucky. We were working hard to ensure some sustainability for these civic activism ideas, but actually on the day when we launched the apps challenge, the representative of the government was there. He was sitting in our midst and he said, look guys, we have this problem. We launched a campaign on abuse of official vehicles. We opened an email address and a phone line, but we had like one complaint. One. And the whole country is furious with how official resources are being used. And we figured it was the problem because the channel was wrong. Who is going to pick up a phone and dial and report something that might have happened on the streets several hours ago? So in a way, our winning app was a response to that because they now have day-to-day communication with the Public Relations Bureau. So whatever picture they receive of official vehicle being misused out of working hours in a location which is not official, violating traffic code, that is sent to the Bureau and then it is investigated and then reported back to the public. So we were just really lucky to find a responsive institution. And nowadays we are talking about using this app to engage the citizens in the fight against grey economy. So whenever you're not being issued a fiscal receipt meaning that some coffee place or restaurant is not observing their tax obligations towards the country, that will be reported by the citizens, and then part of the penalties, part of the funds collected from the penalties will go towards some social good activity, charity or something like that.
Thank you. Before we like to sum up, we also got a question on Facebook asking how can people be included who are not on social media? Please, Jonne.
By joining.
I think many people, when they talk about social media, are talking about internet necessarily, but I think people tend to forget that the mobile phone is one of the biggest revolutions, technological and communication revolutions, that the world has ever seen. So it's not a way. There's many countries in which mobile phones are actually the only communication channel available to marginalized communities, and they're being used for a wide range of different purposes. Trade networks, communication networks, education purposes. So that would be my answer. Social online platforms are not necessarily needed. They're a very good tool, maybe one of the best, but mobile phones can also be used in this instance. Maybe someone else wants to add?
Maybe just by way of example, and this actually takes place in the United States. Whoa, the most developed country in the world is using text messaging for participatory budgeting. How it works is really simple. There are posters at bus stops and different areas where people frequent a lot with a question, should we spend money or this or that, and the people who see the poster just answer via text message. So also in Kenya it's being used for participatory budgeting, meaning asking people about their opinions on how public funds should be utilized.
Thank you. I would like to sum up. Do we have another question in the audience?
Maybe just one more, but then I think it's time to sum up.
Yes, we do. To sum up, I'd like to have a look into the future. As we see in Turkey, for example, some voices say that media is not reporting appropriate on protests. And I heard an interview with the European correspondent of Atefie, a Turkish television channel, saying they don't need classical media anymore because news made its way through social media. And my final question would now be, what would you think, how will the influence of social media on politics develop in the next years?
It will depend on how it is used, because how it works with social media, every one of us is a reporter. We each have a voice that is amplified beyond our wildest dreams. Everybody can hear us, whatever we say is written on the internet, it cannot be erased. And there might be people that follow us on social media who might believe whatever we say. So it's our own responsibility to only spread the truth or things that we can verify. By way of example, some people are saying that in an instance of breaking news, shut off your TV, your PC, and plug your phone. Delete your Twitter app, because Twitter might be spreading misinformation. It actually happened in Boston when the unfortunate events of the bombing during the marathon, and breaking news reported and Twitter picked up some persons who were accused of being the perpetrators of this act, and they in fact were not. But because of the Twitter-generated frenzy, they were in danger during those couple of days before this all resolved. And when it came out, allegedly the perpetrators were from Chechnya. A bunch of people were saying that they were from Czechoslovakia. So we really have to be personally responsible when we use social media. Always use it with common sense and only report information that you have verified or can verify yourself, because you are responsible.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, I think first thing, social media will keep on making politics faster. Now, there is no way after an event happened, a politician can hide somewhere in the room for 2 days. Very quickly the speculation, the rumors will start, and it will get off hands faster than he could have managed if he would have taken it up actively. And I think that politicians are learning that. So the bright side is that the politicians cannot hide. They have to be fast in reacting to the events. Having to be faster in reacting to the events, there is less time to create proficient lies. So actually, it's less time to, it's basically more probability to slip on your own lies when you lie quickly. And we have seen that happening in Lithuania already. And therefore it brings more truth and transparency. But definitely social media has to be used carefully, as already has been mentioned. And I believe that the most important thing for the nation is to decide how to promote the demand for appropriate, basically how to make right decisions in promoting the right sort of demand. I think the social media will be developing in the directions where there is going to be a demand supported by the national strategies. And then I think this is what we're facing today in Lithuania. We have a long-term strategy called Lithuania 2030. It calls for finding tools to increase the role of civic reporting of social media. But these tools are not yet to be found, and they can be misused.
I have a lot of things to say, but let me give you a personal story. I worked in Gaza in 2010 doing some different youth projects, and social media was the window youth had at the moment for communicating with the outside world and basically putting a face to real political stories. So we get the person behind all the politics through social media. And I think in those kind of contexts, you will see more and more young people involved using social media to break isolations, to fight for social change. The other thing I want to say is that, as I also said in my presentation, I don't know how social media is going to look like, but I do hope that it will increasingly be focusing on co-creation, having different people create something at the same time online and distributing it at the same time. So that's what I hope for. I think we need something else than just Facebook. We need more than Twitter, and we need more than YouTube. We're gonna see things that we cannot imagine, and we have to be prepared. We have to think of these tools as a resource for our communication and for our engagement with our target group.
Thank you for these final remarks. We are now at the end of the first night owl session of the Security Days. I would like to thank Kathy and Nono from the OSCE team that you established this very interesting session with youth participation. I think it's really a need that youth becomes more a priority. I would like to thank you in the audience for the very interesting questions. Of course, I would like to thank you coming from all over Europe here to Vienna to discuss about social media with us. You can comment still on this session and all the whole Security Days on Facebook, on Twitter. The hashtag is SecDays. If you are still interested in our work, we would like to chat with you after this session, even maybe go for a drink. And now I would like to ask the Secretary General of the OSCE to end the first day of the Security Days.
Thank you. I'm coming with a bag, but I'll show you the contents in a while. I'm here to thank you, first of all. I think this was an excellent conclusion of an excellent day. So you lived up to the expectations, so congratulations to all of you and keep up the very good work. But however, there was one thing missing, I think, in tonight's session. And what was missing was the owl. And I'm happy to play that role myself. Owls have an advantage. Unlike Secretaries Generals, owls don't need to be necessarily politically correct. So let me take advantage of this role in conclusion of the day, just to share a couple of considerations and maybe also share a little confidential detail. The confidential detail is that I'm priding myself for being very much behind this session. I asked Kathy to organize this night owl. I was in Munich for the Munich Security Conference last February, and I attended a night owl there. And I thought it was a very interesting environment. People were more relaxed after a long day and the tiring day of discussions. And the discussions that night owl were, I thought, more productive than some of the other more formal sessions. So I said, why don't we take this model? And the guidance I gave to Kathy, we could subsume in three, let's call them hashtags: security, youth, and social media, of course. And Kathy did the whole thing. She found you, and I was very pleased to do that. Now, coming to social media, of course, we operating in the security field, we need to really make an effort to stay up to date and to be aware of what's going on in our societies. And this, I think, is a very important development in itself. As I was listening in one of your presentations, the presentation from the tall Montenegrin lady, I have to say I would fail miserably on the first 2 points of your list of reasons why social media are good, the technological awareness and the abilities, because I have my oldest son is roughly in your age group, and it tells me that I'm pathetic on Twitter, but you know, I'm making an effort, and I'm coming from another generation in a way, and I'm trying to be aware, I try at least to use it and to look into it and to see what I can get out of it, and sometimes to use it more active. I did a tweet this morning. I'm very proud of that. But I think we really need to make this effort to look at what this means for us, for our way of working, and what is the impact of this on what we do. A couple of considerations on points that you've raised. One, in my speeches, and now, you know, I'm taking off guard my people, because they usually prepare speaking notes for me when I intervene, and this is the only bit of the day for which they didn't think of preparing me a speaking note. So I'm taking some freedom, if you want, of sharing with you my thoughts. In some of my speeches, I pride myself and my organization for what we are doing, for instance, in Georgia, where we are engaged in a mechanism which we call the Incidents Prevention and Response Mechanism, the IPRM, on South Ossetia. And my feeling from reading the reports I'm getting is that the number of incidents we deal with are not as many as the number of incidents you raise in your circles. So this obviously calls for interaction. And I noticed the fact that you say we bring it to the attention of authorities, of internationals, so that's very positive. From our side, probably we could do something to try to reach out a bit more and to build partnerships. Obviously, there is the issue that was raised in the discussion, also verifying the solid foundation of the information. I think that's key, and we have to avoid that these networks are used to convey wrong messages or even create incidents as opposed to addressing them. But it's through building alliances and building coalitions, if you want to call them that way, that we can protect ourselves. That's certainly one of the ways from this kind of risk. But I think it's positive, and we are opening up slowly this. We're redoing a website now, and we're making it interactive with social media, and we will have accordingly also to look at our field operations. And we are very active as the OSCE in our contacts with the civil society, and so also looking at how field operations can interact wherever they are present with the society and with the new media. So that's certainly something that it's important for us to keep in mind. The second consideration, this is the last one, I'll conclude over this, is Copenhagen. I never heard this before, but very, very interesting. Climate change is something to which I'm personally very attached. And as we have an economic and environmental dimension in the OSCE, I myself suggested a number of times, let's try to do more. And I often get a pushback. Sometimes I wonder, governments might be looking at climate change issues as a difficult area to engage in. It's in a way, it's easier to deal with the consequences of an incident, showing helicopters that help, and rather than dealing with long-term challenges that require very unpopular policies. That will do nothing to make governments win the next elections, and if they produce results, they produce results in a very long time. So it's a struggle from my perspective, to try really to put on the agenda of international organizations this kind of issues that are, in any case, very complex and require strategies that are multiple and involving many sectors at the same time. So I think this internationally requires two things. It requires a strong leadership in the international community, and requires a strong push from the societies. So the work that you also do yourselves in this field, for instance, as one of the many, to try to push the international community to do more, I think it's important. So I would like to encourage you in this. Now, talking of climate change, you've come here at a week when apparently it's going to be extremely hot. But the problem with climate change is that weather forecasts are also very unpredictable. So here we go. Umbrellas for everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I'll come back. Oh, sorry. Why? Oh, I want to.
Okay, thank you for coming.